I Neil O'Brien recording my ECC for the first time. And, people ask me quite often, who's your typical client? Who's your best client? And that would be somebody who's probably in their 50s, who has a business 10, 15 years, and who's a nice client list, good products and services, but the business is not generating enough profits. The sectors, it could be software, it could be solicitors, engineers, maintenance. There's a whole range, but that typically is the kind of person I find I get my best results with. And so why do I end up working with people like that? And I have to go right back, because when I was growing up, I was like 8, 9, 10. There was 5 children in the family, my parents, and it seemed there was always people calling to the house, and it could be any time of the day and night. It could be in the middle of our dinner and there'd be a knock at the door, and I might go to the door, and it seemed to be typically there were kind of elderly people, maybe in their 60s, and they always seemed to have a big brown envelope with them, and they would be brought in down to our good room, because in those days every house had a good room. My dad would go down with them. My mum would make them tea, and like my mum was always baking, so they probably got scones or lovely fresh soda bread, and my dad would spend an hour, maybe 2 hours with them. And even though I wasn't in the room, I got a good sense of what was going on. These people had received this form in the post, and it was quite probably something around pension, because in Ireland, when you hit 65, you get a state pension. And so they'd received this in the post. Now, why were they calling to my father to help them fill it in? Is because a lot of these people left school at 12. Back in the 30s, those big families, people at 12, people left school to go work on the farm, or maybe there's a big mill in Blarney. People just worked there as well. So my dad was one of probably the few people in our village of that age to get a secondary education. So he went to school until he was 18. So he was seen as being an educated man in our village. So when people had something like that, they would call to him, because these people had received this detailed 30-page form in the post to fill in, and they'd left school at 12. So it must have been very intimidating for them. They would call to my father, and he would sit down with them and help them complete. He'd probably fill it in for them, go through question by question. And he was a very patient man, very thorough. So he would go through that with them and fill it in. And that meant that they could apply for their state pension. So years later, I found myself working with people who had nice businesses, but there wasn't enough profit in there for them to fund their retirement. And unless they changed something, they were going to have to work until they were 70 or 75, and their partner probably thought they were going to be retiring at 60, get a house in West Cork or go off to Spain or spend time with their children, grandchildren. This wasn't going to happen. So I'd work with these businesses and help them grow not just the sales, but grow the profits, because it's the profits and cash in your bank account that can fund the pension, put into a pension fund so they could retire. So I remember the exact moment I made the connection between what I was doing, working with these people to help them retire, and what my dad used to, and I grew up watching him. And I remember when I made that connection, it was about 10, 12 years ago. It was very emotional. I mean, it was like I had to stop talking for a few minutes. I was going through an exercise with somebody, because my dad had died a few years earlier, and I'd never made that connection. So what I realized is that I was hugely influenced by my dad, by watching him when I was younger, helping people. I ended up wanting to do the same thing. And again, it's only maybe, in recent years or recent times that I've kind of realized that most of the major decisions in my life, that my dad had a big influence on it. So like when I was 15, I don't know if you remember when you were in school, you have to try and remember, well, what do I want to do with my life? When I was 15 and in school, the only thing I considered doing was accounting, because that's what my dad did. I mean, I didn't consider doing anything else. So that was one big decision. And then after college, I spent a few years abroad. I was in London, I was in Florida for a few years. And some of the people there, my friends there, Irish, were settling down and staying there. But like I always intended coming back. So I moved back to Tower, my village, which is kind of where my dad was from. And, that was a big part of his life. So I ended up moving back to Tower, where I was from. And then I worked as an accountant for about 15 years. And for the last 6 years of that, I was with Pfizer's in Cork. And people were would give their left arm to get into Pfizer's because it was a very good company. It was their long-term pharmaceutical, paid well, good, you know, pension, good share options and whatever. And very few people ever left Pfizer's, but I left them after 6 years because what I was doing in the evening time is I was helping friends who had their own business. I was helping people like the guys in their 50s and who wanted to grow their business. And I loved that. And it was a calling. It was like, felt like my purpose. And even though nobody ever left Pfizer's and everyone was kind of shocked and my poor mom was praying for me, what was I doing? I left because it was the right thing for me to do. I had a calling to go and help people, business people. And I knew I had a real knack for numbers and for spotting profitability. Even when I worked as an accountant, I used to be working out, well, what are the most profitable customers and clients? So I had a real passion, I had a real, I suppose, skill for numbers and identifying trends and spotting opportunities for businesses. So it's like, it's taken me a while to get the full realization but when I look back on it, almost all the big decisions in my life were influenced by me watching my dad grow up and helping people in the village. And I ended up running mastermind groups then, which are like communities of people bringing along different skills and knowledge, and everyone in that group can help everyone else. But to me, a mastermind group is a little like a village, because when I was growing up, my dad would help people with forms. But like, you know, if you wanted a wall built, you went somewhere else. Or if you wanted your car fixed, you went to Mick. You know, everybody had different skills and abilities, and that's what makes a village strong. And mastermind groups are like that. So it was pretty amazing, really, to realize the influence. I suppose my dad was like a role model for me growing up, and that's had a huge influence into me and my business and what I do now, and the kind of people I work with and what I help them do. Right back to my dad helping people fill in those huge forms so that they could apply for the state pension and have a comfortable retirement. Okay.